The warm evening air of Miami, Florida, carried the sound of waves and distant traffic as Ethan Carter stood beside the window of his modest townhouse, watching his 9-year-old daughter, Emma, finish her homework at the kitchen table. To anyone passing by, Ethan looked like an ordinary single father trying to keep his life together. He drove an older SUV, wore simple clothes, and avoided flashy restaurants or expensive social events. What nobody knew was that Ethan had built a successful investment company years earlier. He had always believed that wealth should provide freedom, not attention. His business interests were handled through professional managers, and he rarely appeared in public as the owner. Even Laura, his former wife, had never fully understood how successful he had become. Their marriage had ended 6 months earlier. Laura had told Ethan that she wanted a different life. She had met Richard Hayes, a powerful technology CEO who traveled between Miami, New York, and Silicon Valley. Richard owned luxury homes, expensive cars, and a reputation for attending exclusive events. Laura believed Ethan couldn't compete with that lifestyle. "You're always working, but nothing ever changes," she had told him during their final argument. Ethan had simply looked at her. "I don't need to compete with anyone." She left anyway. Ethan never tried to stop her. Instead, he focused on Emma. He made breakfast every morning, attended school meetings, helped with homework, and made sure his daughter never felt responsible for the divorce. One Friday evening, Ethan received an invitation to a private business event at a luxury hotel in Miami. He almost declined, but his investment advisors told him an important acquisition was being discussed there. So Ethan agreed to attend. He wore a simple dark suit and arrived without an entourage. Meanwhile, Laura was attending the same event with Richard. She was dressed elegantly and proudly stood beside him as photographers moved through the ballroom. Then the conversation suddenly changed. A guest looked toward the entrance. "Isn't that Ethan Carter?" Laura turned. Her expression immediately changed. Ethan was walking through the lobby. But he wasn't alone. 2 business associates followed him, speaking quietly about an upcoming investment. Laura stared. "Why is he here?" Richard glanced at Ethan. "I know that name." Before Laura could respond, an assistant approached Ethan. "Mr. Carter, your aircraft is ready. The pilot is waiting." Laura heard every word. "Aircraft?" Ethan simply nodded. "Thank you." Outside the hotel, a black luxury vehicle was waiting. Ethan entered. Laura followed to the window. Then she saw the aircraft parked on the private runway. It was a stunning $38 million private jet. The pilot stepped forward and greeted Ethan respectfully. "Good evening, Mr. Carter." Laura stood completely still. Her heart raced. She suddenly realized the man she had believed was struggling financially had never been what she thought. Ethan wasn't trying to prove anything. He simply walked toward his aircraft, unaware that his former wife was watching everything. And the biggest surprise was still waiting for her. Laura remained near the hotel window, unable to take her eyes off the private jet outside. The sleek aircraft stood beneath the runway lights, surrounded by a small security team. Richard noticed her expression and immediately understood that something had changed. "Laura, what's wrong?" She slowly turned toward him. "That jet belongs to Ethan." Richard frowned. "Are you sure?" The pilot called him Mr. Carter. Richard's expression became serious. He took out his phone and searched Ethan's name through a business database. Within seconds, his face changed. "Laura, what? Do you know who your ex-husband actually is?" She stared at him. Richard showed her the screen. Ethan Carter was listed as the founder and majority owner of Carter Capital, a private investment company with holdings in technology, real estate, logistics, and renewable energy. Laura felt the room spinning. "How much?" Richard hesitated. "His exact net worth isn't public. But his investment portfolio is worth hundreds of millions." Laura couldn't speak. She remembered every argument they had shared. Every time she had complained that Ethan didn't earn enough. Every time she had compared him to Richard. She had believed Ethan was financially struggling because he never talked about money. But Ethan had simply chosen privacy. Then Richard received another message. His face became even more uncomfortable. "What now?" Laura asked. Richard looked at her. "Carter Capital owns a significant stake in my company." Laura's eyes widened. "You mean Ethan is your investor?" "Yes." At that moment, Ethan walked back into the hotel to retrieve something he had forgotten. He saw Laura and Richard standing together. For a moment, nobody spoke. Laura finally approached him. "Ethan." He looked at her calmly. "Hello, Laura. I didn't know." Ethan nodded. "I know. You never told me. You never asked." Her eyes filled with regret. I thought you were struggling. I was busy raising our daughter. Laura looked down. I made a terrible mistake. Ethan didn't respond immediately. Richard stepped forward. Mr. Carter, I'd like to discuss our company's investment agreement. Ethan nodded professionally. We can schedule a meeting next week. Richard seemed relieved. Laura looked at Ethan. Can we talk privately? Ethan agreed. They stepped outside. Laura apologized for leaving him and admitted that she had judged his worth based on his lifestyle. Ethan listened quietly. I didn't leave because you were poor, he said. You left because you thought money was the only thing that mattered. Laura wiped away a tear. Can we ever fix things? Ethan shook his head gently. That chapter is over. He looked toward the hotel. I have a daughter who needs me. That's where my priorities are. Later that evening, Ethan returned home. Emma ran to the door. Daddy, how was your meeting? Ethan smiled and hugged her. It went well. He looked through the window at the city lights. The private jet, the money, and the business success meant very little compared with the peaceful home he had built with his daughter. He had no interest in proving Laura wrong. His greatest victory was simply living a life she had never understood.